Uh, Hi, Dr. Vikram. Thanks for your time and thanks for being on this podcast. So Dr. Vikram is the principal dentist of Wood Lane Dentistry in Reading. Vikram completed his BDS from University of Wales in 1999 and received the membership MFDS from RCS Edinburgh in 2002. He started working part-time as a dentist in '02, followed by buying the same practice in 2010. You also did your master's in conservative dentistry from Eastman Dental during that time as well. Dr. Vikram is married with two boys who also share his love for sports. So Dr. Vikram, welcome to this podcast.
Thank you. Yeah, it's an honor to be on.
Great. So Dr. Vikram, do you want to walk us through your life up till the point, let's start from how did you decide to do dentistry? Was that in your family or like why dentistry? And what brought you to that point of thinking that's what I want to do?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, very much by accident. So my family are definitely not, not in any kind of profession really. I come from very much a kind of business community. But my dad was always very keen that I didn't enter that world, that actually I did take up some sort of profession because he believed it would be more stable. And I think probably since the age of about 6, I wanted to be a lawyer, a barrister in particular. And that's how I was thinking all the way through, right until the point I took my GCSEs. And I actually went for some work experience with a solicitor, and great experience, 2 weeks there. And at the end of it, we become actually quite close. And he said to me, Vic, I really like you very much, and I hope you don't mind me saying this, but you should really think carefully about your next step, because unfortunately, there is very little work for Asian barristers in this country as things stand. So he said, if you feel that you want to battle barriers for most of your career, then you should go for it. But I want to be open with you, and you should think very carefully about it. It's a sad story, but actually, obviously not with a sad ending. So I had to think very, very carefully, and I decided I probably didn't want to be battling any more barriers than I already had to. And so I really was at a point I didn't know what to do. And my dad had always been quite keen that I do dentistry. And to be honest, with nothing else on the table, I just kind of went with it. And to be honest, it was probably about halfway through my second BDS, I realized at that point, yeah, do you know what? I've made the right decision. And it really was the right decision. I don't regret anything, and I'm not sure I would have been any happier having fulfilled my early ambitions. I think.
And why was your dad interested in dentistry? Was it like, did he see other people around you, a lot of expats doing dentistry, or was it like his love for dentistry?
I mean, I come from the Sindhi community, and really, no, we didn't have any dentists really at that time in our community. I think he thought, well, I was very good at science at school, and so I think he put that together with it being possible to have a stable business, and those two things kind of married quite well with dentistry. So I think he was thinking quite pragmatically on that front. And I appreciate his insight actually now. So yeah, I think that was it really. So I think many people say that, don't they? That they kind of fall into things by accident. It really was the case for me, I think.
Yeah, and when you mentioned about you choosing to, like, any earlier on, you wanted to be a barrister or a solicitor, and was that coming from your, like, what interested you to become a lawyer first, and when did you come to UK? Were you born and brought up here, or did you move while you were young?
Yeah, I was born here. So my grandfather, actually, he lived between London and West Africa, Nigeria, Lagos. And so our family's been associated here for a long, long time, the early 1900s. but my dad actually went back to India for schooling, and then came back in the 1960s. Well, 1960, I think he came. Was it early 1960s? He came back. My mum was here. She was living with her aunt, actually. So she was born in Singapore and grew up in Jakarta. And then she came here as a kind of finishing school with her aunt. They met and got married. So, and I was born here in West London.
Oh, brilliant. But so it's a very truly multinational and multicultural, in a sense, like
is,
you mentioned, West Africa, Malaysia, Singapore, India, and now obviously UK.
Yeah. So I mean, the Sindhi community in general, they're mostly a business community, and often maybe the second son would go abroad and set up a company there, and then trade back with the sort of home company back in India. I think that's how it sort of developed, and certainly did with both my my dad and my mom's side.
Brilliant. But yeah, now you are a businessman in a sense, right? So you own a practice, and so you're fulfilling both the dreams, being a dentist as well as being an entrepreneur. And do you want to walk us through your journey as a dentist? So I think I did a brief about your bio. Obviously, I would have missed out some great milestones there. So you walk us through. So I think 99 when you graduated. So maybe from your college life and the different milestones that you were able to hit.
Sure, yeah. So I graduated from University of Wales College of Medicine in Cardiff in 99, which was a fantastic experience. But I mean, 5 years seems a long time at the beginning, but actually I realized pretty much straight away that there was so much more to learn. And so I was determined then to go on and do as many training posts as I possibly could before I settled down somewhere. And so really I sat down and thought, well, actually, what do I not know very much about? What do I not feel confident with? And really, I sort of planned out my career in that way. And I started off when I did VT, which I think was important. And that was a very, very good year. And then realized that really oral surgery was something that wasn't well taught in my time at Cardiff. And so I went back to do a Max Fax job. And also actually did a job in community, which was attached to the general professional training program that I was doing. So that wasn't really a choice, but it was incredibly valuable for my life as a general practitioner later on.
That was 99 to 02. This was all happening from 99 to before you started your master's.
Yeah. And then from there, I pretty much realized that restorative dentistry was really where my passion was. And so I was really lucky enough to get an SHO post up in Leeds at the Leeds Dental Institute, which was, I'm sure it still is, but it was a fantastic restorative department. They had some really big names in the restorative department. And fortunately, we're also really very keen teachers as well for my sake. And so, yes, I did a restorative job up at the Leeds Dental Institute in prosthetics and perio. And then came back down to London and picked up a part-time job at St. George's Hospital in restorative, and then actually spent the rest of the week in practice. In fact, in the practice that I'm currently sitting in now. So that was a great blend. So I was doing proper restorative work on referral at the hospital, and I was in a nice little community general practice here in Sonning Common. And then it got to a point where I felt I'd hit a sort of glass ceiling in terms of my education. And so I actually just took a sabbatical and went back to university and went actually to the Eastman Dental Institute to do a full-time master's program there in cons, as you said in the introduction, which many of you will know is fixed prosthodontics and endodontics. That was a very intense year. But once I finished that, the local PCT, I came back to the practice, and the local PCT then put me through an accreditation program and accredited me as a dentist with specialist interest. And then I started doing referral cases on the NHS sent to me by the PCT, which was, again, I mean, I was just in the right place at the right time. But it was, it was a fantastic experience, and really wonderful, weird, wide breadth of cases, and I learned a huge amount doing that. And then when they decided to re-tender that contract, I decided that really that wasn't what they were offering wasn't for me. And then I built the referral specialist, the private specialist referral practice here in Wood Lane. And then at that point, then I actually gave up general practice completely to focus on that. So the practice itself still does both. There's a group of us who are doing work, more complex work on referral, but we also have some very skilled young dentists doing general practice for us as well.
Oh, brilliant! And so when you did your master's, after that you became the principal dentist and you bought this practice. So how that happened,
Correct.
and what triggered you to, to buy that after doing a master's? I'm just thinking, was that planned since you started in 2002, or?
Introducing Smile Genius, the most powerful and intuitive all-in-one cloud-based treatment management platform. Smile Genius is up to 6 times cheaper than using the typical 5-6 platforms to complete a case. Every platform comes with its own subscription and monthly charges that weigh down your pocket, regardless of whether you make a sale or not. Smile Genius brings all those services under one platform, making your practice truly hybrid, saving you time and boosting your profits. From leads to loyalty, Smile Genius will assist you through your patient journey. It's an easy-to-use cloud-based platform which brings clinic, lab, and patient all under one roof. Work with any global lab or maybe add your own and get going. It also comes with a complimentary patient monitoring app to enhance your treatment success rate and referrals. Not only that, you can use the platform for any treatment, not just clear aligners. Visit smilegeniusdental.com to book a demo today and be a part of this smile revolution.
No, not. I don't think I'd ever wanted to own my own practice, to be honest. And I think I'd come back from my master's, and I realized that my principal at that time had done a wonderful job of taking the practice from an NHS practice to a private practice, but it was a very small, very basic cottage type practice, and I didn't really have the equipment or the environment really to carry out the level of dentistry that I'd been doing at the Eastman. And so I decided I was going to look for an associate job in a more restorative based practice. And then when I spoke to my principal, he said, look, I don't want to lose you. If that's what you want, why don't you buy me out? And I thought, well, okay, let's give it a go. And so that's again how I sort of fell into being a practice principal. No great master plan there either.
It's just when the opportunity presents itself, right?
Yeah.
And was it something like, did you have any mentors at that time? Like, it's coming out from masters. I'm assuming a lot of your colleagues might have their own practices at that point. So how did you, having no business experience apart from your family background, I know that you may have some business mind, but no formal experience. So what did you do at that time? Whom did you consult at the time when you were buying that practice? Like, it would have been a tough decision, I'm assuming. And were you married at that time? Like, yeah, okay.
Yes, I was. So yeah,
you were.
I was not long married. My wife's actually a restorative consultant at the Royal London. So she's in dentistry as well. So to be honest, I'm a massive fan of mentors. I believe very strongly in mentors, but at that time it wasn't a big culture in dentistry. It's something that fortunately is becoming more and more prevalent now, and there's lots of people really happy to give up, including myself, happy to give up time to young practitioners to help them and to share our experiences. But at that time there wasn't many, and I did have a few friends who were practice owners, and they were very generous with their input. But yeah, you think you know lots about having a practice being an associate, but once you buy your own practice, you realize that actually you didn't know half as much as
You
you
don't know
thought.
anything.
And yeah, you make a lot of mistakes. I made a lot of mistakes and wasted a lot of money and maybe a lot of time. But I learned from every one of those. And it's a long career. So you can afford to make some of those mistakes and put those lessons into practice. There's plenty of time to do that. So yeah.
Was your earlier principal dentist, the practice owner, still there with you for the first few years, or did he leave immediately after you bought it?
He did. He stuck around for a few years. I think it was difficult for him to see all the changes happening.
Yeah.
So yeah, he stuck around for a little while and then decided actually that it was time for him to move on. It wasn't really the same environment that he'd created himself, and things were moving on. And yes, he decided to move on.
Okay. And throughout this, like, what has been your biggest milestone? So was it buying your practice yourself, doing your master's, or after 2010 to date? Like, what do you think it has been the biggest milestone for you?
I think there's been a few. I mean, getting your BDS to start with I don't think any milestone ever beats that. It's such a fantastic feeling to get that BDS. Anyone who's done it knows how difficult that is. You're usually in university with lots of other friends who've got 3, 4, 5 hours of lectures a week, and you're there pretty much full time. And then in the evenings, you're preparing for this week's rounds of tests, and that takes a lot of discipline. Anyone who even just gets their BDS has my admiration. So I don't think anything ever will ever beat that. But there have been some along the way. So I mean, my MSc was incredibly important. I mean, back in 2007, there wasn't the incredible breadth of courses that we have now, and really an MSc was even more important back then. But it gave me it didn't necessarily teach me everything I needed to know. It taught me what I didn't know. And so definitely my education continued very much after the MSc. But it allowed me to talk to some of my dental heroes on a similar footing, knowing that I had the MSc behind me. And actually it probably gave me a little bit more humility, ironically, having the MSc, because as I say, I think you learn a lot about what you don't know and how much there is to still learn by doing something like the MSc.
Brilliant.
And yeah, buying my own practice, if I'd known how much work it was going to be to start with, maybe I wouldn't have done it, but I don't regret it now. And it's given me a fantastic opportunity to shape my environment, which maybe I wouldn't have had as an associate. And certainly I think now with my associates, I do encourage them to be very much involved, and I try and give them as much freedom as possible. It's been so important for me to be able to have control over my environment, and that's what I want for them. They shouldn't have to go through the pain of buying a practice to have that control. And so that's how I run my practice and how I treat my associates.
And like when you talked about like control, and obviously your stamp of a different culture, not just the modernization of the practice, as you said, like what cultural change did you bring that wasn't there before, or the enhancement that you brought that your associates and your staff loves now? And I'm assuming a lot of them would have been there for you for the last few years or more.
Yeah.
So what's that cultural thing that you thought was missing in the previous ownership?
I think first, the biggest thing for me is customer service, because I think there was certainly when I qualified, it was very much an attitude, or you're the dentist, you tell the patient what needs to be done. And even on the reception desk, often there was the feeling that people should be grateful to come and see us at our practice. We were always very busy, and we always had a waiting list, and that unfortunately led to that type of culture. And customer service for me is so important. I mean, no matter how hard we try, it's always going to be a little bit scary coming to the dentist for many, many patients. And if we think about what it's like, I mean, I've had to go and see doctors and that sort of feeling. I think sometimes we forget that that's the same for the patients that we see. And if you've got a friendly face at the desk and someone's trying to go out their way to support you, it makes a huge amount of difference. And so the first thing I started with when I bought the practice was instilling a culture of customer service. You can't always, the customer's not always right, but you've got to try your best for them, and they need to know that you're on their side. I think that's the bare minimum you should be offering.
And what do you think in terms of customer service? That like exactly what changed? Is it kind of more smiling faces around the reception, or making the patients comfortable while they're there at the clinic, or other aspects as well did you look into? Like, and I'm assuming a lot of clinics are still missing that customer experience aspect still.
Yeah. I mean, we do some mystery shopping.
Oh, do you?
Just to see how we compare. And it is surprising, actually, that's how even just that initial phone call, sometimes the experience of that is so poor. And it's a fantastic teaching tool for our staff to see that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, start at the beginning, walking through the door, having a comfortable environment to walk into. We tend to always use patients' names when we greet them. So the reception desk, that's your billboard. They're your billboard. They're your biggest adverts really for the practice. And if they do their job well, actually patients are much more relaxed coming into the surgery. So everybody's important, but no, often overlooked position is reception staff. They really they deserve a lot of respect, and they deserve a lot of time, and it does take a lot of training actually to deal with. I mean, you get all sorts of people coming through the door, and a lot of them are very nervous and don't always present with a friendly face themselves, and you've got to learn not to take that personally, and that's not always innate to people. So you have to sometimes train staff to think in that way, that if people are a little bit rude to you, it's not always about you. They might have other things going on in their lives. They might be really just absolutely terrified walking through that door. They might have struggled to find parking. Trying to put yourself in their position, that's very, very important. So that's the starting point, and then being able to give them as many options as possible, explaining stuff. I think for a lot of people, the fear comes in losing control and not knowing what's going to happen next. So particularly with my dentists, I like them to take the time to explain what's going on, give people the feeling of control, that they're always in control, that they can make the decisions. You're there to provide the best quality care for them, but ultimately they've got to take responsibility for their health, and they have the right to make those decisions, even if it's not to have the treatment that's best for them. You don't necessarily need to carry out treatment that you don't feel is right, but you need to respect their decision not to take up the treatment that you think might be right.
And do you think that, like, I'm assuming your practice is full private, as you said, so would it have been you were part of NHS, would you have been able to give the same level of customer service? I know that it's a fine balance between, like, how much of customer service can you do being a private, full-on private, versus a mixed hybrid practice. So what's your view on that?
I think if you're fully NHS, there's limitations.
Yeah.
Being nice to patients and treating them with respect doesn't cost anything. And so I think that's a bare minimum. Whether we were private or NHS, that level of service at the front desk actually doesn't really cost anything. That should be universal. Where it is more difficult, I think, is once you get into the surgery, and realistically being able to spend the time that we spend. If we were NHS, I think that would be a challenge. And certainly you can't offer the breadth of options that we offer on an NHS on the NHS system. I think we have to be honest about that. Yeah. There are some fantastic colleagues out there who are incredibly skilled, doing some some excellent work to the best they can on the NHS system. But certainly their jobs are much easier, and possibly they could excel further if they were in a more private environment. certainly that's just my own opinion.
Yeah, and I'm assuming like my wife is a dentist as well, and she used to tell me that for, let's say, in her clinic, usually the reservation, like if there's an NHS patient coming in, the time that's blocked is 15 minutes. Sorry, okay.
Apologies,
okay.
yeah.
A few minutes, like 15, 20 minutes, 10 to 15, 20. And if it's a private patient, it's 45 minutes to an hour. And the first 15, 20 minutes is spent around just making the patient comfortable and chit-chatting and, just making them easy as if they are at home, which is not possible if you have to look at so many NHS patients and there's a queue of, a waiting list of, 2 years. So yeah, I completely agree. So moving on, you talked about, I think we were talking about the mentors, and you really appreciate the mentors that have mentored you in your personal as well as professional career. So in terms of the learnings that you have developed, which has been the biggest learning to date? Was it, like, I'm just assuming it might be, running your own clinic once you got control of that? Or was it that, or was it something else? The biggest learning for you in your career, maybe personal or professional? Yeah.
Yeah. So when you say learnings, I mean, I think the most important thing that I learned is this is all about people. I mean, I think certainly when I first started as a young practitioner, I very much thought that my personal life and my professional life were very separate. I would never talk about myself to patients, and actually that changed. I think patients, they want to have a piece of you. They want to know about you. They want to share time with you, and building those relationships definitely makes the job easier. And certainly when I was a general practitioner, I knew I would often be treating 3 generations of the same family. I'd know what was happening, who was getting married, and and actually they started to learn that about me. They were very excited when my first child was born, and they always take a great interest. Even now, I don't treat most of them; they're treated by my associates. But if I bump into them in the waiting room, they always ask about my children, or some of my hobbies or my interests, or what I'm up to, and vice versa. And it's a real privilege to treat people like that, and it does make the job easier. It increases trust. You understand that person's motivations for making decisions, and so that was a big learning point for me. Once I got over that, there is always going to be a professional. They're not completely your friends, but doesn't stop you being friendly. And once you get over that sort of big barrier, actually, the job becomes more enjoyable.
And do you think that this kind of change in the approach, or the learning that you had, that changes the atmosphere? And I'm assuming the answer is yes, but the culture of being people first and understanding your emotions, your hardships, or just being friendly, also trickles down to the staff, as you're saying, right? And staff feels that you are more approachable as a principal dentist, and it's not like you're my boss. Like there is that level hierarchy, but still it's kind of flat organization in a sense. So is that something that your staff gives you as feedback as well, which is very important?
Yeah, I think there isn't a one size fits all. So for the majority of my career, no one calls me anything other than Vic. My staff, my patients, we're all on first name terms. I'm a pretty informal guy, and I am with my patients and with my staff, and that's served us well. That fits my personality, and actually, it's what most of my patients are comfortable with. But I don't prescribe that for everybody. For some people, it isn't. They like that slight level of formality. And what I'm learning, and certainly, some of the new staff many of my staff have been here. Some of them have been longer than me. I mean, I've got staff who've been here 20 plus years.
Oh.
But actually, some of the newer staff maybe prefer a little bit more structure and want me to be a bit more of a traditional boss figure. That's something that's actually new to me. That's something that I've had to learn with with the last few years, and the type of staff that we're taking on, the personalities, and are very different to the ones that we've traditionally had. I'm not ashamed to say that I'm always learning and always having to develop my leadership style.
Brilliant. Yeah. And has there been any case or a patient that has influenced your career in a positive way, or something? Let me rephrase the question. Any case or a patient that you still remember was your best, or where you derived most of the learning from? Any specific case that you can, or a patient that you remember the most?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few.
It's very difficult to choose one.
Yeah. I mean, I just thinking. So, I mean, I had a patient, and this was early on in the days when I was placing implants, and she was in her, I think she was close to her 80th birthday, and she'd worn dentures for a long time, and she'd asked about, I heard that you went away and did this thing with implants, and can I have some? And so we talked through it, and at that time I was heavily criticized by a lot of the staff for even contemplating putting implants in an 80-year-old. But she was keen, and we did it. And I saw her recently. She's now well into her 90s. Yeah, she's
90s, yes.
well into her 90s. She's got some dementia, and she's actually, sadly, she's in a home now. But she hasn't got plastic denture. She still eats all the food that she wants to. And she came up to me, and she came with her daughter, and she said, the best thing I've ever had done was those implants that you placed for me. And that was a validation enough. It was an absolute thrill to say that.
That's beautiful. That's really good. Like, a bit of that age. And that's what I was about to ask, that, have you seen her recently? But it's just beautiful. Like, you do remember those cases. Yeah.
Yeah. And it just told me, I think sometimes it always becomes a bit routine, to be placing so many implants, and you forget how life-changing this thing is for many, many people.
Yeah, because I think a lot of my wife tells me, when she's back and she's talking about some of her patients, and she takes a lot of interest in old patients because they have time, they acknowledge, they usually, like everyone else also acknowledges, but it's usually the older you get, you become more appreciative of someone else's assistance. It could be professional or at home. And she's always very fond of, older people and the way they treat the dentist. So that reminds me of our dinner table discussion, which reminds me of my follow-up question. You said that your wife was also a dentist. Is that correct? So like, how is the dinner table discussion? Like, do you just cut off that, now we are at home, we are not talking about anything about our clinics? Or is it like you are okay? How is the dinner table talks like?
I love dentistry. I could talk about dentistry all day, every day. But my wife very much believes in, she comes home and that's the end of her working day. And so, throughout our marriage, actually, we've never really discussed dentistry at home. She actually now does a day a week for us at the practice.
Okay, great.
I mean, it's lovely to have lunch together on a Monday when she's in. And there we do talk about dentistry, and we do talk about cases, and we have some joint cases that we do together. But when we go home, there's no dentistry at all.
Okay, brilliant. Great. So we'll move to the next question. I'm looking at my other screen. So it's kind of a rapid 5 questions. So maybe yes or no, or a single word, or maybe a couple of words. It doesn't matter. So I'll ask, so are dentists good patients? Yes or no?
I think yes. I do treat a few patients, a few dentists, and generally they're great patients to treat. Yeah.
And are you a good patient? If you're good, like, I'm assuming your wife might be your dentist. So like, how are you?
I think I am. Yeah. I appreciate the difficulty. So I think most dentists do, and so they try and make things as easy as possible.
Okay, brilliant. Choose one. associate dentist or a practice owner?
Oh, that's a mean question. I guess a good practice owner sets the tone. So if I have to plump for one, I maybe go for a practice owner.
Brilliant. Who in your clinic plays a bigger role? A dental nurse or an associate dentist? I'm asking you to pick sides. I know it's difficult.
I think nurses make or break a practice.
Completely agree.
Yeah, they're incredibly important. I mean, associates are important too, but actually we can't function without nurses, not to any sort of high level.
Brilliant. No, that's the answer I was expecting. What interests you more, being a dentist or being an entrepreneur?
I still am very much a wet finger dentist. So the entrepreneurship is an adjunct, but definitely dentistry is my passion.
Brilliant. And are you a tech person? Yes or no? Like, do you want to involve a lot of technology within dentistry, or you are a no tech, old school?
In my personal life, a no tech person, but in dentistry, very much a fan of technology. Our practice is very much going in the digital direction. So we do intraoral scanning, we have cone beam CTs. A lot of our planning now is all done digitally. So yeah, very much. I'm a big fan of technology in dentistry.
Brilliant. That's great. And okay, so that was our first 5 rounds. So we'll move on to the last few questions. So I'm assuming being a clinic owner and seeing the changes that are happening. So what trends do you see in the industry, and how are you positioning not only your clinic, but also you're telling your associate dentists as this is something, let's say it could be the courses, it could be the technology, it could be something else. So what trends do you see, A, and B is how do you have that discussion with your staff and shape their career as well so that they are aligned to what's coming up?
So I think that there's 2 big trends. I think within dentistry itself, technology, as we talked about before, is massive. And if you don't get on board with that, you're going to be left behind. And I think technology will do 3 big things for us. It will improve the accuracy that we can provide treatment at. So a lot of our planning now is done digitally with intraoral, combination of intraoral scanners and cone beam CTs. It will make complex dentistry more affordable. High level dentistry is expensive, but it'll make it more achievable for more people. And if you imagine doing a full mouth recon case, for instance, if you have a technician sitting there with their porcelain powders, building up teeth, 24 units, as we did during our MSCs. Compare that with a technician designing something on a computer, sending it to a milling machine, and that being milled while he goes off and plans the next case. You can see that the cost difference is going to be enormous. And also, actually, it'll make good dentistry more achievable for more dentists. For some people, the kind of artistry is just innate. They're just born with it. For most of us, we've had to work really, really hard to get to that level. And sadly, for some people, they're never going to get to that level. But I think technology will help to level the playing field. So I think technology is a big thing. I think the second trend is to do with patients, and patients are a lot more aware of what's out there, and that social media really has pushed that. And so you need to be offering a wide range of options within the practice, or patients will just go somewhere that does. I'm lucky enough to have associates that are curious and are ambitious, clinically ambitious, and so they are very self-driven, and so we do offer quite a lot of stuff in the practice. It hasn't taken a huge amount of effort on my part to build that. That's been very much self-driven by my team.
Brilliant. And do you like guide them through the right ways of marketing? Because I'm assuming they would be posting their own images or kind of before and after. So is there a learning about marketing? What's the right way of marketing? And, like you'll see all the Instagram channels now filled with the before and afters. So is that something you are also interested and you teach? Or is there an external agency that you usually deal with? Or how does it work for you?
Yes, I mean, to be honest, rather than me teaching them about social media and marketing, I think it's possibly the other way around. Yeah, they're brilliant. I mean, they're brilliant with the with posting and putting their stuff on Instagram and taking photos. Yeah, I'm learning very much from them. Yes, we do. So our population isn't massive on social media, our patient population, but that's certainly changing. So a lot of, the average age of our patient is probably 60. We do have a wide range, obviously, within that. So we have young families, we have a lot of very old patients, but Instagram and Twitter have not been a big driver thus far, but that's going to change. And so that's something that we see. So it's probably not a big driver for us now, but we've already realized that that's something that we need to get involved with. And yes, we use an external company to help us with that, who do some posting for us, but importantly also help us to learn how to post and to structure stuff.
Yeah. A lot of dentists that I talk to, they usually say that it's a hygiene thing. So you may not be attracting, it's like posting something, it's not like making ads, but it's kind of a hygiene thing that if someone comes and looks up, so it's more like if anyone is doing background checks on your clinic, is the new one who has moved to your area, it helps them know that you are active, you're engaged, and what kind of culture you are promoting. So that comes out from that social media as well. So a lot of people use that as a kind of hygiene factor, making few posts each week and just keeping it alive.
Yeah. And again, I think people want to know about you.
Yes.
So some of the posts that we do some lovely clinical posts and we get some minor engagement, but actually the ones that really generate a lot of engagement are stuff like, we posted something about our Christmas party, or, we're having a bit of fun on mouth cancer awareness, with pictures with our funny wigs and things. So people are interested in people. And
the images that shows that you are human as well. That's something that correlates, right? Rather than a dentist and a patient.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
And I think last two questions. So I know that you all are so busy with being a dentist, being a practice owner, looking after the staff, hiring, training, and also you have a family life. So how do you balance, and what do you do for your mindset in terms of keeping everything balanced and taking out time for your personal life as well? So what tactics do you use to do that and to achieve where you want to go?
Yeah, I think a big change for me in the last few years is actually realizing that you need to take time out. Thinking time is so important. You don't have to be physically doing something all the time. You can, it's important to sit and think and plan. And so I do set time aside now during the week. I just call it planning time. So I might think through problems, I'll jot down some ideas. I might go through the notes from last week's planning time. And so I think that's very important as a practice owner, that you're taking the time out just to, I think someone used the phrase working on your business rather than just working in the business. Whoever came up with that phrase was absolutely right. And then you actually do need to step away from the business. So that was very hard for me. First, 10 years or nearly 10 years that I owned the practice, it was really consumed the majority of my life. So anytime I wasn't with the kids, I was probably working. And you need to step away. You need to live life, because you bring a lot of that to your work. If you can live life outside. It breeds interesting conversations with staff and patients, and actually just helps you to reset. So I do a lot of stuff with my boys in particular. I help out with coach. I was helping out with the football team. I now do some stuff with the cricket team. It's a lot of sports stuff with them. I'm a big history buff as well, and so I do a lot of stuff with history, and I take the boys on trips to historical places. Not sure that they're that interested, but I do it for my own selfish reasons, so I can enjoy it as well. But hopefully some of that rubs off on them as well.
That's great. I think it's kind of what you like as a kind of hobby side as well. So that kind of creates that balance. And absolutely, even I kind of always remember that working on your business and not in your business. There are times when you have to work in your business, but create a balance when you have to work on the business. And I'm assuming that the Wednesdays that you talked about, right? So Wednesday is the day when you're working on the business. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So it's just nice in the particularly middle of the week. It just breaks up your clinical week, and often you get pulled aside to deal with some problems or whatever. But actually, I always try and set disciplined about having at least a little bit of time on that Wednesday to just sort of shut off and think.
Brilliant.
So, and also it's also important to be accessible to people. So I do a lot of treatment planning with my associates on Wednesday as well. So they know that that's a day they can walk through my door anytime. But they know that I'm not going to be, they've got a little bit more time with me. I'm not rushing around and I haven't got a patient waiting or anything. So that's also been quite valuable, I think, for both parties actually, to have that time for that kind of little bit of mentoring.
That's Wednesday. Okay, last question. What advice would you give to the other associates who are just starting their career, or other associates who have worked and maybe they are planning to become a principal dentist and acquire a clinic? So from both the angles, what advice would you give to them and how they can look at their career from now on?
Sure. Yeah, what if going to your second question? So someone who's about to buy a practice, I think once you buy a practice, it is very consuming, and it can be difficult to then develop your clinical dentistry. So my advice would be to try and focus early in your career on your clinical dentistry. Because when you buy a practice, a lot of your clinical time then needs to be on autopilot. So if you've put the time in early to develop your skills, it will pay dividends later on. I think it's difficult if you jump in too early. It can be quite difficult to then develop your clinical side later on. And yeah, I think it's a stressful job, but I think any job that you care about is stressful, and it's important to remember that. I know lots of, particularly you read lots of Facebook posts over COVID, and there is a lot of low morale in the profession, and that is sad to see, particularly with young practitioners, because I was so excited. I wanted to do dentistry every day when I qualified, and I think now, particularly with social media, young dentists are hearing about the horror stories all the time and how patients can be so ungrateful. But the truth is that the majority of patients are incredibly grateful for what you do. And there will be some patients that you can never satisfy. And I think if you put time into your clinical dentistry and you can be confident that you are doing what's best for that patient to the best of your ability, then sometimes it's fine to say to a patient, I don't think I can achieve what you want me to achieve, and both parties just walk away. There's no shame in that. But actually, that will be pretty rare. Most patients are pretty smart, and if they think that you are trying your best for them and that you care, they will overlook ups and downs. And as long as they feel that if things don't go quite according to plan, that you're going to sort it for them, they'll go on the ride with you. And you have a lot of happy patients.
And which brings back to the customer experience and patient experience, right? So you're giving them the truth, sharing them all the options and the reason why you won't be able to do it, which builds trust as well. Yeah. Brilliant.
Yeah. And again, another thing you asked me earlier in the conversation about the culture, and one of the things that's very important here is full disclosure. You don't have to get everything right, but when things go wrong, you need to front up about it, admit it hasn't gone right, come up with a plan and sort it out. That's very important, and actually that engenders a huge amount of trust moving forward.
Brilliant. Great. Thanks, Dr. Wick, or I should say Wick. Thanks for your time. I know you have to do a school run after this, so we'll wind up. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks for everything.